Well, we get it rolling on the Krueger Show. Hope everybody's having a phenomenal day. And we're getting it rolling right here, looking back at the NFL draft that was for the 49ers. Niners rounding out their quarterback room this morning. And with us to talk about all of it, Matt Barrows, who covers the Niners. And he covers them well for the Athletic. Everybody sign up for the Athletic and check it out because they got great content. Matt, Tim Kawakami, obviously the great Dave Lombardi, putting together an awful lot of good content surrounding your 49ers. So check out the boys in the Athletic. Hey, Matty, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Larry?
I'm doing good. I mean, draft weekend came and went, and, this was kind of a frustrating draft, I think, to watch for the 49ers just because, let's say round one is the beginning, and they didn't pick until at all. So you had to watch all these players go to all these teams and be like, that team got better. This team got better. Then the second day begins with round two, and they had to wait through all of round two to the end of round three. And then day three begins with round four, and the Niners didn't pick until the fifth round. So there was a lot of waiting, a lot of watching the Eagles and Seahawks and Lions and some of these other teams get better. But overall, I was quite pleased with the way it shook out. Why don't we get right into it? What do you think was the most impactful draft choice of the 49ers draft weekend?
Well, I mean, in terms of 2023, it's probably Jake Moody, the kicker, because he's going to have the most impact. He's going to be out there the most, probably of all these guys. You can see several scenarios where games come down to the wire, and it's up to Jake Moody to win it. So, I think that there was a real eye toward 2024 with a lot of these picks, and that's what happens when you have a loaded roster like the 49ers. I know the 49ers draft as a whole has landed at number 32 on all of these draft gurus rankings, but there's a reason for that. I mean, there's not a lot of starting positions available. So even if they had picks in the first or the second round, it's very unlikely that those guys would have been penciled into a starting spot. So I think a lot of these guys, the Robert Beals, even Ji'ayir Brown, the top pick, these are guys that the 49ers are looking at for 2024. Obviously, if there are injuries, that could be accelerated. But if all goes according to plan, I think this draft class as a whole, really you start to see them factor in next season.
Everybody was critical of the Moody pick because it was a kicker in the third round, but it was the compensatory picks after the third round. Essentially, it's the fourth round. The fourth round has been kind of the kicker round or the specialist round. If you have a great punter, could go in the fourth. A great kicker could go as high as the fourth. I wasn't quite as oh my God. Just simply from the standpoint, I think they got a pretty good kicker. I think they got a guy who's, clutch, who kicked in some cold weather, who went 4 for 4 in the college football playoffs. And I think if you're going to be real with yourself, you got to acknowledge that, the 49er fans have seen very little pain when it comes to kicking. And so you better get a good one. If you're going to replace Robbie Gould, who had never missed in the playoffs, you better get a guy who's thought to be a really good kicker because I think the fan base is going to have a hard time the first time, Moody misses a regular season kick, let alone a postseason kick. And the fact that he's considered clutch and he's got a relatively strong leg. There's always a transition because it's a different deal kicking in college than the pros. But if this guy can be their kicker for the foreseeable future, I have no problem with him being picked in the third round. Everybody points to Roberto Aguayo going in the second round and then getting bounced out of the league. Obviously, that's a bad scenario. Anytime you use a day 2 pick and the guy's out of the league within a year. But I think a lot of it comes down to, how are they wired mentally? And by all accounts, Moody is a guy who's absolutely a guy who loves being in the moment, loves the pressure. Kicked well in the cold weather and the wind, and Big Ten football in November and December there are no domes for the most part. You're playing outside, and it's the conditions are there every week. So I kind of like that. Does that mean that Zane? That obviously means no more Robbie Gould, but does it mean that Zane Gonzalez gets cut now, or do they go into camp and have a little competition? How do you see that whole thing shaking out?
Yeah, I don't think it hurts to have Zane Gonzalez on the roster. I mean, he's done it. He can offer advice. He can push Jake Moody, and Zane Gonzalez's only issue is that he's gotten hurt a lot. That his teams haven't been able to rely on him. So maybe it's Zane and Jake throughout the offseason. And if Zane Gonzalez is still healthy at the end of training camp, he's somebody that they might be able to trade. So they had this very, small trade with Carolina. I think it was a conditional seventh that landed Zane Gonzalez here. They may be able to get something a little bit better than that for him. So, they may have played their cards absolutely right when it comes to that. And maybe it's something where they keep him around on the practice squad if they're not able to trade him or if he isn't get picked up. My assumption is that if they do cut him, he does get picked up because that's the bottom line of this draft. It's a rare draft in that there were 6-7 teams looking for a kicker. And that's precisely why the 49ers felt compelled to take Moody at the end of round 3. Moody, I was just talking to Moody's holder at Michigan, offered a lot of great insights and, very much what you were saying. This guy is unflappable. But he was telling me that they had 8 workouts with teams. So the holder gets called into the workout as well.
Sure, yeah.
And that's just unheard of. I mean, maybe 2 or 3 in a normal year will the top kicker get that, but they had everybody coming in each week to kind of put them through the ringer and to have Jake Moody do kickoffs. That's a big deal. Kickoffs wear out the leg like nothing else. So it just underscores the attention A, kickers were getting, and B, this particular kicker were getting. If he gets past the 49ers in the third round there, very, very likely that he gets snapped up by the Patriots or the Lions or one of those 7 other teams that worked him out in that fourth round.
Let's get into the picks. Ji'ayir Brown from Penn State. What do you think? I mean, I like it from the standpoint of I see more of an Earl Thomas. Some people say, oh, he's a box safety. I don't think so. I think this guy can play the deep middle or in the box. And I think he runs, even though he ran the 4.65, if you watch the film, he runs fast enough. Very productive player, MVP of the Rose Bowl, and I watched that game start to finish. He was everywhere, sacking the quarterback. He made a pick. He's tackling against the run. He might have been the reason that Penn State won that game. What do you think? What are you hearing about Ji'ayir Brown? And do you give? See, I think there's a chance that he takes Gibson's position because I think he's a better all around hitter, a little bit more physical than Gibson is at this point. I think Gibson's a great deep center fielder, but I like the flexibility of Brown. I think he can play in the box or in the deep middle. What are you hearing? What do you like?
Yeah, I watched that game too. He definitely pops in that. And I'm sure the 49ers had that rolling in their draft room as well. Yeah, I mean, he's just a good fit. He's a good culture fit too.
Right.
Everything I've read about him, he's the guy in practice during the week that's got everybody revving. He's the guy in the locker room before the game at halftime. Just pregame huddle. That's the guy. He was Penn State's version of Fred Warner. So the Warner Brown combination, I think, is going to be really complementary. Two guys cut from the same cloth there. The speed, though, I mean, I think that is a concern because it's not like he's being complimented by a burner in Talanoa Hufanga. Though that's exactly Talanoa Hufanga's critique. Didn't run very fast. Now, has that manifested itself on the field? I don't think so. I mean, Talanoa Hufanga has not been perfect as a deep safety, but the mistakes he has made, I think, are more sort of over aggressive mistakes. Bites on a play fake, comes up on the wrong receiver. There haven't been many. I can't even think of one, and I'm sure there are a couple, but I can't recall anywhere you're left saying, "Wow, he's just too slow to be back there." That hasn't occurred yet. Now he hasn't been perfect, but it hasn't been that type of situation. So my point is that maybe this critique about Brown's foot speed is kind of similar. Is that instincts and things like that are more important than the time 40 speed, and that we won't end up seeing that. But it is something that I think you have to keep in mind, because it's clear that Hufanga Brown is the duo for the future.
No question about it. It was a bad weekend if your name's Charlie Warner or Ross Dwelly, because, the Niners drafted Cam Latu out of Alabama. They drafted Braden Willis at Oklahoma. I really, I didn't understand the Latu pick. I thought they were better players on the board, but who knows? They obviously, this is the team that picked George Kittle in the 5th round, so they sometimes see things that we don't see. The Willis pick, on the other hand, I watched a lot of Oklahoma this year, and I went and watched Willis after the draft. I love what I see with Willis as far as, just super competitive. And the way the Niners, if you watch other teams around the NFL, there will be somebody tiptoeing across the middle. But you watch the 49ers, you see none of that. Ayuk, Debo, Jawan Jennings, these guys run across the middle. Even Ray, they run across the middle like they own it. George Kittle. And when you watch Willis at Oklahoma, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, he's fighting for extra yards. He's running with conviction across the middle. Not the biggest guy, not the fastest guy. I understand why he went in the 7th round, but to me, I love his effort as a blocker. I love his fight and competitiveness to get extra yards, and I love his conviction and courageousness that he runs across the middle of the field. Give me your thoughts on the 2 tight ends. The Latu one was baffling because I thought there were better tight ends, and I thought there were greater needs and greater players there. They obviously love him.
Well, you remember my 2023 draft crush, Brenton Strange. He was gone. He went in the 2nd round, Larry. Wow. These people, it was by Balky. It was Balky who did it to me.
Words get out. Word gets out that Barrows is hot on a guy, and it moves his moves his stock
on my draft crush, and then they end up drafting the guy a round earlier than he's supposed to go. But my point is that Braden Willis reminded me a lot of Brenton Strange, just the way that Oklahoma used him, the courage over the middle stuff, the breaking tackles part of it. I mean, both of those guys were up there among the league leaders in yards after contact. So again, and I think it's similar to Brown, their top pick. Willis was like a very vocal team leader on that Oklahoma team. So another good sort of locker room fit. And I agree with you with Latu as well, or at least I did. He did not. Like I said, I did a lot of research on the tight ends, and I basically I was just turned off by Latu for whatever reason. I just never really got into him as much as I did the Schoonmakers, the Brenton Stranges, the Payne Durhams, et cetera, et cetera. But I went back and I watched their game against Tennessee, and
that was his best game.
I understand what the 49ers are saying. He's much more fluid than Braden Willis is. He's good on the hoof. He was an excellent blocker in that game. Did a lot of inline stuff, one-on-one with Tennessee defensive ends, and put a couple of those guys on their back. So I think that they like the potential there. I talked to Scott McCloughan. I do this every year where I go.
Oh, I love this. This is one of my favorite articles of the year.
Yeah, because
is it out?
It's objective. I mean, he's not pulling punches or anything. Yeah. And he really, really liked this pick. I mean, in fact, he thought that Latu was underdrafted. He would have drafted Latu higher. He had him rated higher than what the 49ers got him. And you can read everything that he said about him, but that was one of two. I won't spoil the other one, but that was one of two that I was sort of surprised that he ended up liking the guy a lot more than, probably, liked him as much as the 49ers did, but it's better than where they got him. And because he saw upside with this guy as well. Like this is a player who's right now is probably a number 2 tight end, complimentary tight end to George Kittle. Of course, that's what his role is going to be. But in years to come, he's going to be tight end 1 caliber type player.
It's funny because in remembering your last year's piece on, or maybe a couple of years ago, he liked Hufanga.
Yes.
McCloughan was hot on Hufanga, and McCloughan has a way of kind of, I mean, his opinions would shape my opinion. That's how on it he is. I mean, he's that on it. I'm shocked that the 49ers haven't put him on a contract and said, because you see John Dorsey in the Lions draft room or whoever team he's with now. You see some of these guys who used to be in charge who, for whatever reason, are no longer in charge. Sometimes it's personality or age or whatever, and they go graduate to, like, Tom Donahoe was a consultant for the Eagles and Dorsey was a consultant for a couple different teams. I think McCloughan would be a phenomenal hire for the Niners as kind of an internal consultant on personnel. It would maybe not the kind of move that would be popular with Peters or Lynch, but to me, more eyes on these players is a good thing. Is that one out, Maddie? Because I've usually hawk all your stuff, but I have yet to see that.
Not yet. I'm working on that one right now. I just talked to him.
Ooh, you're giving us a little sneak peek.
Yeah, you got a little sneak peek here on the Krueger show.
But, when's it coming out?
He does consult with, I don't know how many teams altogether, but let's say it's half a dozen.
Oh, he does. Okay.
Teams, and he also works for. This is sort of a growing industry where agents will hire him to basically analyze, a client or a prospective client, and to get his take on that client. So he, he's not always able to offer a strong opinion on everyone because he hasn't scouted every player like he would have as a GM. But the vast majority he had, he'd been watching, and some of them he'd been watching for several years. So this is a very good, worthwhile conversation with McCloughan this year.
When will you be releasing that on The Athletic?
I think tomorrow morning.
Gotcha.
Thursday morning.
For all of you diehard NFL draft fans, I would say that article will be one of the best articles you read this entire draft season. So that alone would be a good enough reason to sign up for The Athletic. Not to mention Dane Brugler, who I think is really, really good at this as well and does a lot of fantastic stuff. All right, if there was a position where the 49ers improved, I would say it's the secondary. The addition of Wilkes, I think Wilkes is a good eye for secondary talent. I like the 3 or 4 guys they added back there. Obviously, Ji'ayir Brown, but Darrell Luter Jr. was one of my favorite picks. I think there's a decent chance that he becomes, is elevated to a starter at some juncture. I like the size. I like the long arms. I like what I'm seeing from him strength-wise, man-to-man wise, footwork wise. And then I love Deshaun Jameson, the return guy that they signed after the draft from Texas, who's, nothing great size-wise, but terrific break on the football, 5-year player there at Texas, played a lot of football, really elite return guy. I love him. And then they also added Avery Young, a safety out of Rutgers, who I haven't studied. But what do you think of the additions in the secondary? Tell me specifically what your thoughts are on Darrell Luter Jr. in that pick.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking of Jameson, the first one.
Yeah.
He reminded me of K'Wan Williams. I don't know how much outside cornerback K'Wan Williams played in college. I assume he was an outside cornerback because they all are. And that's mainly what Jameson did at Texas. But his size, he might be 185, 5'9", but just the way he plays kind of reminds me a lot of K'Wan Williams. So I think he's going to be another option at nickel for them. And then Luter, after the pick is made, the 49ers get these guys on a conference call with us, the media,
Right.
and very, very quick. It might be 7 minutes. We're just kind of catching up on who the player is at that point. I mean, some people haven't even heard of the player. And so it's hard to take away anything really meaningful from it. But I will say that Luter seemed, of the 9 guys we spoke to, Luter seemed like the most composed, confident, mature, and that was reinforced after the draft. I asked Adam Peters, I said, when you were making that Luter pick, there were tons of cornerbacks available. All those local guys that visited the 49ers for their local pro day, Rajon Wright, Mekhi Blackman, Caillou Blue Kelly, those guys were still on the board, several others. And so I asked,
Stephen Jones, the kid from
yeah,
Appalachian State, they brought him in. He was there. There was a bunch. They
there were a
looked at a
bunch. I
lot
mean,
of day 3 corners.
there are 12, legit day 3 corners. And so I asked, okay, what was it about Luter that made him stand out from that group? And he said, the maturity that we felt when we visited with him. This is a guy who's married. He's got a kid. He's got his what together. And I'm not trying to critique Ambry Thomas or Diamondor Lenore, but I think there was a real, those guys were young guys coming into the league. They, had to learn a lot. And I'm not saying that Luter doesn't have to learn it all, but you do get a confidence about him. People kept saying that he's a man. He's a grown man already. And I think you have that with his disposition. You have that with his play strength. I think he's strong, long arms. I just don't think that he's going to need he's going to need a year and a half in the weight room to get used to his body and to be more confident out there. I think he's going to come in with a lot more confidence than maybe your typical rookie does.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Then the next pick is interesting. I thought this was a major position of need, the edge rusher, and they didn't invest a lot in the edge rusher position. They went with Robert Beal out of Georgia, and then when you look at those measurables, you're like, whoa, this guy runs 4.4 off the edge. And listening to Lynch talking to Kirby Smart, hey, look, if you don't ask him to drop into coverage and play pass coverage, this guy's going to be exactly what you want because he comes flying off the edge and he'll set the edge against the run. And basically, in a word, saying to Lynch, this guy gets up the field. This guy gets up the field and makes stuff happen. What do you think? I mean, were you surprised they didn't go more as far as the edge rusher, considering what they've lost this offseason? And what are you hearing about Beal?
Yeah, to me, this was the biggest risk-reward pick out of all of them. I mean, a guy who could go one or two ways. I mean, it could be just a sensational pick. That was a missing element on this defense heading into the draft. They had a lot of defensive linemen, a lot of DNs, but none who really just fly off the line of scrimmage. I mean, it's something that Samson Ebukam did, something D Ford did before him. I don't think that they felt like Ebukam developed like they thought he would. He was productive, but not quite as productive as they had hoped. But you go to a 49ers practice, and the thing that jumps out immediately is one corner of the field. It's just cacophony. And it's Chris Kasurik and Daryl Tapp, the two defensive line coaches, just yelling for a good, I would say that 35 minutes of the individual session are spent with competitions to see which of those guys can fire off the line of scrimmage the fastest. And we all have videos of it, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. But I'm just saying that is of utmost importance to that group. Being able to just burst off the snap, create space, get offensive linemen going backwards, and just being the aggressors. And this is something that Beal excels at. And I think he's one of these 2024 picks. I think that this year they're going to lean on Cleveland Farrell. They're going to lean on Austin Bryant. They're going to lean on Drake Jackson, etc. Two of those guys, Farrell and Bryant, are only signed through this season. So it makes sense that Beal will be part of that mix, probably more so next year. And then you'd have a really nice sort of 3 defensive end rotation among both Drake Jackson and Robert Beal Jr.
Beal looks exciting, but yeah, I agree. I think boomer bust kind of a player. Now the Niners did restructure Christian McCaffrey. Is there any in their speculation that maybe that is for some kind of edge rusher piece? There are an awful lot of veteran quality, edge rushers. Leonard Floyd, Ngakwe, Clowney, they're all there. Jason Pierre-Paul, you want to go older, Melvin Ingram, Justin Houston, they're all out. They're all out there if they want to add one. They did lose almost 700 snaps with Amenahue Willis and Ebukam leaving. What do you think, Matty? Have they created this cap room for one more free agent signing? Could that free agent signing be on the edge?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have that option now. And some of the guys that you mentioned are a little bit long in the tooth. Melvin Ingram, Jason Pierre-Paul. Those guys don't want to go through the spring with a team if they can avoid it. They don't want to go through training camp if they can avoid it. My point is that I think a lot of these teams are going to use the spring, especially the spring, to kind of see what they have and to evaluate. And if there are any injuries at key positions as well. My point is that the 49ers are giving themselves the option to add somebody like that. If they feel like they need it, or if they're forced to do that at that position. The one name that since free agency began that jumps out to me that you just said is Ngakwe, because I just think that he's tailor made for what this team wants and somebody who could excel there. I mean, Beal and Ngakwe are similar players. Ngakwe's big critique is that he only does one thing really well, but it happens to be the one thing that the 49ers hold most dear, which is getting off the line of scrimmage quickly and making a beeline to the quarterback. So he, out of that group, makes the most sense. I imagine he's also probably in the most demand and probably will get the most money. It's something just to maybe keep in the back of your mind. I don't think it's anything that's imminent. I think if they made a move like that, it's probably in August or maybe even September move.
If I'm a pro personnel director, I'm making note of the fact that the 49ers are probably going to cut a good linebacker or two this summer because they were already pretty loaded and they added 2 guys. Obviously you got Warner and Greenlaw. You got Oren Burks and Curtis Robinson, 2 really good special teamers. You got Flanagan Fowles, add a 3rd guy to that list. And then you have Marcelino McCrary-Ball, who looked great in camp last year. I would imagine he's going to be a force this year. And then D. Winters. To me, watching TCU Michigan, D. Winters just absolutely just jumped off the screen. He's small, but he's fast and very instinctive. I like that pick, and I've liked Jalen Graham for a couple of years out of Purdue, and I saw Johnny Holland, looked very, very happy when he was talking to Jalen Graham on the phone on day 3 of the draft. And I would imagine these guys are almost handpicked by Johnny at this juncture. What do you think? I mean, Winters, Graham, what are you hearing there? And do you see that competition this summer being intense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that they had Winters and Graham rated evenly, and they knew that Winters had the far superior 40 times. So they figured, it's more likely that Graham was still going to be available later in the draft than Winters, and they played their cards right in that regard. It's all about Azeez Al-Shaair. I think this team really liked Azeez. He did a lot for them. He played that strong side linebacker spot. Was signed by Tennessee in the offseason. I think on any other team or any other composition, the 49ers would have made an effort to re-sign him, but they already did big deals with Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, so they couldn't. So they're trying to find the next Aziz, and I think you nailed it. I think it's these two guys and Marcelino McCrary-Ball who are sort of competing for that spot. And then I think there were probably two other, maybe three, because it's such a special team centric position linebacker. But let's say that they keep 5 linebackers on their 53-man roster. So you got Greenlaw and Warner and Oren Burks are 3. And then there's only room for 2 more, perhaps. It might be 3. But you're right that there is a lot of competition for those 2 spots, and it's going to be one of the better ones. And I think it means that we're not going to see a lot of Warner and Dre Greenlaw on the practice field in the spring. They're going to give these guys an awful lot of opportunity to kind of prove themselves and get them some quality snaps.
The guy who I think is going to be hard-pressed to make this team that was drafted is Ronnie Bell. I mean, I just don't see it. I mean, you got Ayuk, Debo, Jennings, you got Gray, you got Chris Conley, you got Ray, Tay Martin, Willie Snead. You got a bunch of guys, and now they drafted Ronnie Bell. What do you think they like about Ronnie Bell? And then there was another kid that they signed Shea Wyatt as an undrafted guy, but they had been rumored to be on the verge of signing Jadakiss Bonds, who's played at Hampton, and that's your neck of the woods, right? Isn't Hampton out in the Virginia area somewhere? But Jadakiss Bonds is crazy talented as an undrafted guy, but did it fall through? Do you know? Can you share with us anything that about, is Bonds part of their outfit? Is he not? And what do you think of Ronnie Bell?
Yeah, I don't know what happened with Bonds. It was an early kind of internet report that he was signing, and then he wasn't, and he's not as of now. I don't know if that's in the works or not. He's not represented by an agent, so I had a hard time kind of following up on that, and maybe that was part of the confusion initially. But no, he's not on the team now. As far as Ronnie Bell, yeah, I mean, I don't think that the 49ers are counting on him this season. I think he's somebody who impressed them, just the way he was able to recover from injuries, and was just a good, sturdy, dependable guy at Michigan. Return kicks, was good as a receiver. He's a guy that you keep on your practice squad, and if you run into a jam at wide receiver, he's like a Willie Snead. He's somebody that you can depend on, who's going to know his stuff, who's not going to make mistakes. Is he physically gifted? No. If he was, he'd be a 3rd-round pick. But he's a guy that you would want to have around. So he's sort of the opposite of Robert Beal in that regard. He's more of a safe player. You know exactly what you're getting from him. You love him in your position room. You love him as a practice player. He's not going to wow you with his skills, however.
The one surprise is they didn't go right tackle. I kind of speculated before the draft that maybe tackle would be like this year's version of safety, where we are all thinking their needs severe and maybe they don't see it the same way. They did sign 3 guys after the draft: Joey Fisher out of Shepherd, Corey Luciano, who's a local kid. I think he played in Danville. He played at Washington. And then, how do you pronounce this guy's name? Is it Ilm Manning?
I've been saying Ilm, but
Ilm Manning. Is it 2 eyes?
I don't know if that's correct.
Two eyes and an M in the first name. But I've actually heard good things about Ilm Manning from Hawaii. What's your read on the offensive line? The Joey Fisher signing was exciting. Kuiper had him as the 3rd-round pick of the Niners in a mock a week ago, and he doesn't go in the 3rd round, didn't go in any round. And I know he's got kind of short arms, which is kind of rules you out as a right tackle. But man, the tenaciousness, the film is incredible. What are you hearing about those 3 O linemen? What do you think of the Fisher addition?
Yeah, I think Fisher probably gets drafted if something didn't happen this offseason, and that was he was playing in the NFLPA Bowl and was kicking ass in that game, kicking ass to the point where he got an invite to play in the Senior Bowl. And that's a big deal for
Yeah.
somebody from Shepherd, a Division II school. When you play at Shepherd, the biggest question mark about you is, you're ragdolling these Division II defensive ends who weigh 205 pounds, but what are you going to do against Tennessee and Alabama and Notre Dame and all of the Division I prospects and stuff like that? And so the Senior Bowl would have been an opportunity for him to answer those questions. And on the second play of the NFLPA game, he breaks a bone in his hand. And so he goes out to Mobile and he's able to kind of meet with teams, but he's not able to practice it. He's not able to play in the game. If it had happened differently, I think that he gets drafted, and perhaps he doesn't make it to the 49ers. So this is a guy with draftable skills. I do think that they're probably looking at him as a guard. He did do a lot of center work in his workouts with teams before the draft. So I think that they just want to see whether he could do it, kind of keep that open as an option. But I would imagine he's playing guard for the 49ers when OTAs begin. And, it creates the question, okay, he's probably a guard. Manning is even smaller than him. He's probably a guard. Corey Luciano is definitely a guard or a center, played center at Washington. So the team didn't address at all the tackle situation, which a lot of us had as the top need going into the draft. So that remains a question mark.
Running back. Anytime that Shanahan takes a look at a running back in any round or after the draft, it always makes you say, okay, I got to study that guy. They got two interesting guys: Ronald Awatt from UTEP, who I really liked when I watched the film, and then Kalen Laburn, not Laborn. His father says it's Laburn, the running back from Marshall, 5'10", 204 pounds, and Laburn had like a 300 carry season this year for Marshall. He was used an awful lot, but he still has kind of low mileage if you look at how little he's played. He started at Laburn started at Florida State. He was a 5-star guy once upon a time. I watched both these guys on film, and I thought, wow, I loved what I saw out of Awatt, and then the Laburn story's a very intriguing story as well. What do you think of those two backs? Have you studied them? Do you know anything? Can you share anything with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's a typical kind of Bobby Turner haul at the end of the draft. I mean, Laburn had 1,500 yards and 16 TDs for Marshall, and one of the games was against Notre Dame. So it's not like he was beating up on lesser opponents week in and week out. If a guy who had 1,500 yards and 16 TDs is still available after the draft, it begs the question, okay, why are we ever spending a draft pick on a running back? Because these talented guys are available. And Awatt didn't have nearly as gaudy numbers as that, but his testing numbers were better than Laborn's. And, 4.45 type of guy, very quick, somebody that you can think will excel in this system. So it's already a deep running back group with last year's undrafted guy, Mason, in there. And I think this just kind of adds to that depth.
Couple of interesting names on the defensive side. Mariano Sori-Marin, a linebacker from Minnesota, really strong against the run. I mean, he's really impressive. The other guy I thought was really interesting, Spencer Wagee, who's a defensive lineman from North Dakota State. Now, they list him at 295, but when I watched him, he played defensive end. And he looks like he's playing defensive end in a four-man front. I mean, both these guys were productive college players. Have you gotten any anecdotes on either one? Sori-Marin is a bigger backer than they've taken on in recent years. But man, I mean, watching him fly around the field for Minnesota, very impressive. And obviously, this kid's really, really bright because I think he got like 5 different offers. I think 4 of them were from the Ivy League. Um, any anecdotes on Wagee or Sori Marin?
Yeah, well, Shory Marin is just sort of almost a throwback linebacker. I mean, used to be that linebackers were 250 pounds. Now they're all 220 pounds. This guy's 235, so he's more of a traditional Mike linebacker. The other guys that we've been talking about earlier today have been, like I said, that Aziz Al-Shaair type of role where you want them to have wheels, be able to get sideline to sideline, do coverage. Sori Marin doesn't really do that, but he plays up around the line of scrimmage. Like I said, he's probably a throwback, a 2 down linebacker, but a guy who was really productive at Minnesota. Didn't miss a game the last 2 seasons. So that's got to please the 49ers and their fans. And then the North Dakota State guy, I think he's somebody that the 49ers have had their eye on for a little while. They had they took him to dinner before the North Dakota State Pro Day last month, or I guess it was 2 months ago now. And he's somebody, you're right. He was a defensive end, was around 265 for the Bison, and then decided, okay, to make myself more attractive to NFL teams, I'm going to add weight and prove to them that I'm versatile. I can be a 3-4 defensive end. I can be sort of that big end that Eric Armstead plays sometimes, and I can also play inside. And I think that's what the 49ers are looking at him as, another guy who likely is headed to the practice squad this year. But next year, I mean, think of all the guys who are on 1-year deals: Javon Kinlaw, Kevin Givens, T.Y. McGill. A big chunk of those interior offensive, defensive linemen, Kerry Hyder, are all playing on 1-year deals. So it's something where this guy, if he does make a splash, it's probably going to be in 2024.
Jack Coleto's interesting. His nickname is Jack Hammer, which I got to go talk to Jack Hammer about that and see if that's okay with him. But Jack Coleto's interesting. He played quarterback, he played fullback, he played linebacker, he played special teams. He's a jack of all trades. And when I was looking at some of the money breakdown, it sounded like the Niners threw him some significant money to sign here. Is he the next Juszczyk? Is Coleto here as emergency quarterback? What do you think what can you share with us about Coleto? Because at Oregon State, I mean, he's not really what you want in any spot, but the versatility is off the charts.
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably ended up playing more linebacker than anything else at Oregon State, and that's probably the one position where the 49ers don't see him at all. But yeah, his versatility is what makes him attractive. There were a lot of teams gunning to get him, and just sort of the diversity of the roles that those teams saw him in kind of speaks to who this guy is. Sean Payton had a lot of success with Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
He was pitching Coleto to be his Sean Hill in Denver. The Seattle Seahawks love Nick Bellore. Remember, Nick Bellore was
Yeah.
here for a cup of coffee one year. He's a guy that played fullback, played linebacker, has really turned into their special teams ace. Probably no other team in the last decade and a half has taken special teams as seriously as the Seahawks, and Nick Bellore has been the face of that unit for a big chunk of that. So they saw Coleto as being their newest, latest version of Nick Bellore, and I think that's probably similar to what the 49ers think. This guy's going to be a special teams ace. And he's going to be somebody who can step in if there is an issue at fullback. And that's happened only a couple of times since Kyle Juszczyk been here. I remember back in 2017 when Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch arrived, and they had their first free agency class, and there was a lot of scrutiny over, oh wow, they're paying all that money to a fullback. What a waste! What a waste of funds. And Juszczyk has been worth every penny since then, and something that Kyle Shanahan believes in fully. No one knows how many more years Kyle Juszczyk's going to play. He's 32 right now. He's certainly under contract for a while, but that absolutely could be the play here. That this guy gets to learn from Kyle Juszczyk for a couple of seasons and then becomes Kyle Juszczyk when Juszczyk moves on. So I think that's probably it. The other part is that he does play a lot of quarterback. He used to be a quarterback. When Brock Purdy took over, he was sensational and looked like Jimmy Garoppolo in so many different ways. One of the ways that he lacked, or he was behind Garoppolo, was quarterback sneaks. He wasn't quite as good at the sneak as Garoppolo was. This guy would be awesome at sneaks because he's a big body player. You could use him as a wildcat quarterback around the line of scrimmage, around the goal line. That's what Oregon State did to great effect. I'm absolutely positive that Kyle Shanahan saw all that film, and the fertile brain just started growing all sorts of plays and concepts that he might be able to take advantage of.
Maddie, great stuff. We'll finish on this one. So I'm watching the draft on Saturday, and I'm figuring, okay, well, they didn't move Trey Lance on Thursday. They didn't move him on Friday. They didn't move him on Saturday. I guess this thing is put to bed. He's going to be here. Whatever flirtation they had with the idea of moving him, it was probably just that, and he's going to be here. So I'm getting ready to turn off the TV. I literally walk into the room. I'm hunting for the remote, and Ian Rappaport pops on the screen and is like, just to update the Trey Lance situation. And then he goes on and kind of doubles down that he might get traded again. There might get traded this August. I don't know who's whispering to Ian Rappaport, but he's either making himself look bad or he's really convicted in his belief that this deal is going to come down. I don't believe he's making this stuff up. Somebody's got to be whispering to him. What do you make of that? And what do you make of today? The 49ers signed their fourth quarterback, and he's probably just a camp arm, Brandon Allen. I kind of like Brandon Allen just from the standpoint of he's 30. He's not too old. He's not too young. He's probably at that point in his career where he probably would slip through waivers at the end of camp. They probably could retain him and have a little continuity there. He has played in the NFL. According to Joe Burrow, he was instrumental in Burrow's development at times over the last couple of years. What is your read on where the Niners are with Trey? And give me your thoughts on the addition of Brandon Allen.
Yeah, I mean, going into the draft, we thought that maybe the 49ers take a quarterback in the 6th or the 7th round, and then that guy serves as the de facto number 3 quarterback while Brock Purdy recovers from his elbow surgery. Well, Brandon Allen was a 6th-round pick, I think in 2016, and he played for the Rams for a few years. So he's a guy who's not teeming with talent, but knows this system. I think that's a big deal. So he can come in right away and probably knows it a little bit better than Sam Darnold does at this point. You're right. I mean, he's not a big name. He was good in the quarterback room wherever he was, including in Cincinnati. He's a guy that they can get to the practice squad. This is a team that's nervous about its numbers at quarterback, given what happened last year. I don't think that affects Trey Lance at all. I do think that if it ever got down to Brandon Allen, the 49ers would probably feel more confident in him than they would have in, Dorian Thompson-Robinson or all of a sudden, all the quarterbacks that I had memorized are now out of the brain because the draft is over. Stetson Bennett, that's the one I was trying to call up. just because he has been around for a while and he is 30 years old. I still don't think it's changed though. And in fact, I would imagine after the draft, all the quarterback needy teams having found quarterbacks, that the offers would be less than they would have been in April, when we get to August. Now, I, I'll have to go back and look, but we'll have to figure out who took quarterbacks and who might be still looking for quarterbacks. And I think the Patriots might be the most prominent team that is looking for them. So that's interesting. The Vikings remain interesting given their quarterback situation and the state that they're in. Happens to be the same state that Trey Lance is from. Yeah, I still don't think that it happens in August. I think that a mid-season trade is more likely than that. And then I think that an after-season trade is the most likely of all the trade scenarios. So I don't know if much has changed at all since in the last month. John Lynch characterized it as very unserious trade discussions that he was getting. And I don't think that's any different today.
It's baffling to me that they would even consider it. It's like to me, it's like almost like going on a cross country drive. And right as you're about to pull into, the border state, getting to the coast, you're like, you know what? Let's abort the mission. I mean, you've gone this far with Trey Lance. Wouldn't you want to? I realize if he falls on his face, his value's nothing. But who cares at this point? I mean, I'd almost think I'd rather find out what he is definitively than move him and take a chance that, he finds it somewhere else and, all of a sudden you look bad. But we have the one thing with the 49ers is we don't really have a real feel for how they feel about him because they've been very cagey in their answers about him. And it's like they throw compliments towards Purdy. They throw a lot towards Sam Darnold. I at least haven't heard a lot thrown towards Trey. Maybe they're just going to play. Do you think they're just going to challenge him and say, last year we handed everything to you. This year you're going to literally fight and claw for everything you get. We're handing you nothing. Is that the new mindset, or what do you make of the fact that they've talked up Darnold and they've talked up Purdy, but man, they were talking up Trey a year ago, but not now?
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I mean, they're putting pressure on Trey Lance to respond. I mean, this is he was the anointed one in 2021. The same thing in 2022. I mean, they bent over backwards to make him seem like the leader, the number one quarterback. It's different this year for sure. And so I think they're absolutely curious to see how he responds. And I think he's going to respond well. I mean, that's why they liked him in the first place. They think that he's made of the right stuff. Like all of the character stuff is there. He's a leader. People like him. He doesn't whine. He doesn't complain. He doesn't go on social media and erase the 49ers from his Twitter page and all the other petulant little things that quarterbacks do these days. He's a good guy. He's a solid guy. And I think he's going to respond well. And, the end result of that is positive. Either he steps up and becomes an awesome quarterback for the 49ers, or he steps up and becomes a much better trade candidate for the 49ers. The 49ers win in either of those scenarios.
Matty, awesome stuff. Do you take a vacation now?
I will. It's going to be more of a June vacation than a May vacation.
You vacation like an NFL coach. You realize that? Those guys don't take any time off. But then after the mini camp in May, but before training camp, that's when those guys go on cruises. That's when they head to Mexico. That's when you're not going to find them in the facility. You have become essentially an NFL coach.
I don't know if my liver can handle being an NFL coach.
or your lip, because you don't really dip. So I mean,
that's right.
Yeah. if you could just get a Copenhagen habit, that would probably you're halfway home. You're
I think
halfway
if
home.
I vacationed in July like an NFL coach, you wouldn't be seeing me in August at all.
I want to see you this July. I want to see you take the roster, have it laminated, and then put it, like in your shorts. Walk around like Chris Kocherik does with the play sheet in his shorts. You're not really a coach unless you got a laminated sheet in your shorts.
That's right. I'm going to spend my whole vacation with the laminated wrist, the play calls on the old wrist. I'm gonna have the world's worst farmer's tan. It's just going to be like this white chunk where my my call sheet was.
With the Velcro, you peel it back, and we see Tim Kawakami's phone number, Dave Lombardi's email address.
There you go.
The security code to how you can park your car at the facility. Maddie, awesome stuff. Your content is second to none. I'm not joking. For those of you who thought I was joking at the beginning, I'm not joking. My favorite article of the year is Scott McCloughan's breakdown of the Niner draft, post-draft, because McCloughan has a tendency to cut through the muck and get right to the essence. And he's so damn good at it that it literally will change your opinion on some of these players. So that is coming out tomorrow. So I would suggest the 300 people that are sitting here in the chat right now, if you've yet to sign up for The Athletic, all collectively go sign up for The Athletic, because you'll want to have it today so that when that article comes out tomorrow, that you can be the first to read it, because it's one of the best pieces of the year. Maddie, thank you very much for your time. You do a phenomenal job. All Niner fans appreciate you. I do as well. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks for jumping on the Krueger Show with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for that support there. And I'll just add that we did a big breakdown of the undrafted guys too. So all the guys we've just been talking about: Jake Coletto, Joey Fisher, Jameson, the DB from Texas. There's a nice breakdown of each of those guys and why the 49ers pursued them once the draft ended.
You're the best, man. Keep it rolling. Thank you very much.
All right. Talk to you soon.
There you go. The great Matt Barrows in the house. Gregus Khan says Matt Barrows, 49ers number one beat reporter. I would agree with that. No offense to Matt Mayoko. No offense to Eric Branch. No offense to Jennifer Lee Chan or anybody else. As far as I'm concerned, that guy's the best. There was a throwaway line that Matt had earlier in the sorry, I keep adjusting my eye. I think I put my contact in wrong in my left eye, and it's kind of like moving around on me. But Matty made a reference earlier today in this live stream to, hey, I think I asked him about a player, and he's like, well, he's representing himself, or he doesn't have an agent, and so Matty has done the diligent work of calling the NFLPA, figuring out who the agent is, contacting the agent, getting more information. This is why he's the best, because he will grind, he will work, he will hustle, he will use his head, he will think. He's fantastic, absolutely fantastic, and it's a treat to have him here. All right, I want to hear from you guys. Let's take a few thoughts here at noon. So top of the hour, Alex Barber is going to stop by, and we'll talk more about the NFL draft. But I've got a few thoughts on the Niners draft, top to bottom. I'll share them with you after this. But I want to hear your thoughts as well. What do you think was the best pick, and the sleeper pick, and the worst pick? Best pick of the draft or draft weekend, could be an undrafted guy. Best pickup, worst selection. Take a little negativity. We can throw a little negativity out there. Best and worst, and most intriguing. The guy you're most eager to see this summer. We've got this one from Jerry. Says, Larry, can you get Dave Lombardi on the show? I can ask. We had him on just about a month ago. But Dave's content is really, really good as well. All right, we are brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Check them out in Corte Madera. Check them out in Emeryville. Great barbecue spot. It looks a little bit like this.
So New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never going to deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
Hey, do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it. Guaranteed.
All right, we're coming down the home stretch on the Krueger Show. Let's hit the chat. And what people have to say. Best pick, worst pick, most intriguing pick. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a pick. It can be undrafted guys because they're all the same. They're all people. So who's the most intriguing addition? The worst, which is kind of like the sleeper. The best pick, and the guy you're like, ugh. Come on. What are you thinking? All right, before we go into the chat and get people's thoughts, they're all lining them up here. We got a bunch of them. I'll say easily the best pick is Ji'ayir Brown. Ji'ayir Brown, I see Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas could play the deep middle. Earl Thomas was physical enough to play in the box. Earl Thomas played faster than he timed. He also was a very versatile player who could, he was a culture player. So I see Earl Thomas with Ji'ayir Brown. So I'll say that was the best pick. Close second would be D. Winters. To me, there's very little risk in D. Winters. He runs, he tackles, he's fast. I watched him in the national championship game. He was in some ways the best player on the field. Shooting gaps, making tackles, bringing guys to the ground, going low. To me, those two guys would be the best picks. As far as the worst picks, I'm going to say Ronnie Bell at pick 253. Now, it's a late 7th-round pick, and I'm not saying Ronnie Bell doesn't have skills. He does. He was one of Michigan's better receivers. And, he tore the ACL, but he came back that final year, and it was like he'd never torn it. I mean, it was miraculous, the recovery he made from the ACL. He was terrific that final year for the Wolverines. But I just I don't see him making the team. I don't see how he makes the team. You got way better receivers than him, way faster receivers. Just, I don't see it. I would have rather them gone with some edge rusher right there. Tyrus Wheat from Mississippi State would have been my pick. But we'll see. That was, to me, the worst pick was Ronnie Bell. The best pick was Ji'ayir Brown and D. Winters. As far as the most intriguing, I'm going to say, and this is just, first of all, the running back from UTEP, Awatt. First of all, 17 unrestricted free agents have made it to Canton. Think about that. The last being Kurt Warner. 17 guys who weren't drafted in the history of the NFL have had Hall of Fame careers. So that's not like, it happened once. 17 times. So all I would say is do not discount these undrafted guys. Do not discount guys based on their draft position. NFL people know a lot, but they don't know everything. They make mistakes all the time. And guys who have tons of talent fall through the cracks. The guys that are super intriguing to me off their practice squad, Ronald Awatt from UTEP. Now, I know a lot of people are talking about Leyburn from Marshall, and for good reason. But Awatt is just a great athlete. 35-inch vertical. Grew up in Lubbock, but he was born in Nigeria. Led UTEP in rushing this last year. I really like him. I mean, this guy is really, really athletic. Played defense for a while. 4.5 yards a carry. But it's the athleticism and the quickness and the speed. I like Ronald Awatt quite a bit. But I would say if I got to go with one, I'm going with the Texas corner / return man, Deshaun Jameson. Deshaun Jameson is just crazy athletic. He's probably a nickel corner. He's a 5'10 corner, but he's an elite return guy, and he ran 4.45. And if you watch him, this guy is scrappy and tough. He's got plus ball skills. He played 5 years there at Texas. He's a dynamic playmaker, highly regarded 4-star recruit out of Lamar High School in Houston, and just elite ball skills and explosive break on the ball. So to me, that's that guy. He ran 4.48 at the pro day after running 4.45 at the previous timing. So I like him a lot. I really like him a lot. The other kid, and I don't know if they'll get him because he was on their list initially, but then he wasn't, and I don't think they signed him. But Jadakiss Bonds, the wide receiver from Hampton, 6'4", runs 4.58, has unbelievably great hands, and scored 34 touchdowns in 40 collegiate games. If they find a way to get him in camp this summer, remember that name. How could you ever forget it, right? Jadakiss is the first name. Bonds is the last name. But that kid's legit. And I'm sure there's a battle royale bonus-wise to sign him because I think everybody can see what I can see. Brash Cat says Jadakiss is not signed yet. To me, I will be celebrating if the Niners sign him. And the Niners are going to have I just told you that Ronnie Bell's going to have a hard time making the team. So everything I would say about Ronnie Bell's challenge to make the team, I would say the same thing about Bonds. But Bonds is an unbelievable talent. You know, big receiver with 4.4 speed who plucks the ball with his hands, is a red zone monster. Hampton's a small school, but 34 touchdowns in 40 games. This guy produces. He's a red zone monster. So that one is intriguing. All right, let's hit the chat. Kyle says Leyburn. Leyburn had a 38-inch vert. Yeah, go look at my video on Leyburn. I did. To me, he's an interesting guy. He lived in Japan for a year. His dad was in the Navy. Went to Florida State as a 5-star and then left the program. Had to go to the JC route, then went back to Florida State, got his degree, then transferred to Marshall, and just had a monster year for Marshall. If you want to see an impressive numbers, go look at Kalen Leyburn's game log from this year. I mean, he was the reason they upset Notre Dame in South Bend. Really impressive. Joey Nichols. I like Deshaun Jameson at the Senior Bowl. That's good to hear. Joey also says Joey Fisher, obviously intriguing as well. Yeah, I mean, Joey Fisher got the most money bonus-wise. He is incredibly intriguing. He really is. I mean, the film on him is amazing. We got this from Joey Nichols. Haven't watched Awatt yet. Yeah, I mean, you should go watch him. He also did a couple interviews that are interesting. Waveware says Beals. Yeah, just the fact that Beals runs 4.4 and they're not really going to ask him to do anything except for get up the field and bend the edge. And you saw him in the national championship game sack Max Duggan, coming flying off the. Or I guess it was was it the national semi maybe. He came flying off the edge and made a huge play. No, it was in the national championship game. That's right. It was TCU that got beat by Georgia. And Beals came off the left defensive end, beat his man, and they're not asking him to do a whole lot. They want him to get up the field and go hunt the quarterback. In this system, it's a very simplified deal. So we'll see. Guy's got the measurables. No question about it. I mean, that's where we're at. Think about that for a second. This guy didn't do a whole lot at Georgia, and yet he may have a good NFL career, and I wouldn't doubt it. It just speaks so loudly as to how college football's got to figure out a way to somehow pare down the advantage that LSU, Bama, Georgia, Clemson, that these top-tier teams, Ohio State, that these teams have on the competition. I mean, they're getting 5-star guys, just, stack them, pack them, rack them. They're just sitting everywhere. Have you ever seen a college football coach when he's announcing an injury? It's like no issue at all. Yeah, Bob's going to be out. Yeah, he's out for the year. And we'll have blankety blank stepping in. Where if an NFL coach is like, yeah, we lost this guy. He's thinking about our season's going down the toilet. I'm going to have to move. We're going to have the kids switch schools. College coaches are like, yeah, I got 2 other guys sitting there, probably more athletic, more talented, better, not worried. Joey says, Laburn is intriguing. Watched him yesterday. Little but tough, and there's some nice athleticism there. No question. Another one for Kalen Laburn is the most intriguing. Joey said, undrafted free agents are people too. My point is just that people act like a guy drafted on day 1 of the draft is like a special person, and you couldn't, 2 number 2s is not nearly as good as a number 1. Well, possibly, but they're all people. So I don't know. At the end of the day, and they're all being rated, and the rating is subjective. And heck, even the numbers are subjective. I know there were people that said that Dre Greenlaw ran 4.7. I see a 4.5 guy. The Niners supposedly had a 4.5 time on him. So, even just exactly how big and strong and fast these guys are, a lot of times it's conjecture. It's about, the time that you got when you worked them out. Kyle says the best draft pick is Robert Beal Jr. The worst is Cameron Latu. Not sure at 3rd-round pick that was worth it. Watch the 49ers trade up for Brock Bowers next year. Anyways, best undrafted free agent, Kalen Laborn. It's going to be tough not to say Laborn. Eric Hernandez, the sleeper is the running back from Marshall, Kalen Laborn. Joey Nichols says Winters and Graham could develop into something. Willis is intriguing. Late flyer on Bell is cool. Okay. We got this one from Brash Cat. He says Willis is faster, stronger, longer arms, bigger hands than Latu, and is only a half-inch shorter. I like what I saw from Willis, just from the standpoint of I just retweeted Akash. Akash had a great tweet. Let me see if I can find it here. I just retweeted it, so it should be up there. About the strength of Braden Willis. And it caught my eye. Yeah, here it is. Or about his pass blocking ability. So Akash put this out. Pass blocking tight ends in the draft. Number 1, Travis Vokalek. Number 2, Braden Willis. I'm not sure exactly what this ranking is, but he was number 2. And as far as run blocking tight ends in this class, Michael Mayer, number 1, 82.1, the Notre Dame kid. Number 2, Darnell Washington, the monster tight end from Georgia. Number 3, Braden Willis. Says 49ers may have gotten one of the best blocking tight ends in the 7th round. I mean, that's kind of the way it goes. That's kind of the way it goes. You never know. You never know. Josh says, I have a feeling Braden Willis will be a surprise in the tight end room. Jan Chosla, the worst is Cam Latu. The best might be the kicker. We'll soon see. Joey says, I'm torn between Latu and Beal and Moody as the worst pick, honestly. How can you say Moody's the worst pick? He's one of the highest rated kickers in college game. Jim Harbaugh said he's the greatest kicker in the history of Michigan football. His nickname is Money. I'll take a kicker whose nickname is Money. Kyle says best draft pick is Robert Beal Jr. The worst is Latu, especially when the Niners trade up. Trock Talk says best pick D. Winters. Sleeper pick is Moody. Guy's getting a lot of hate. The worst pick, Trey Lance for the third time as a first-round pick. Wow. Marquez Harris, sleeper pick, Deshaun Jameson. I would agree with that. Idris Ishraq says the best pick is Ji'ayir Brown. The worst pick is Jalen Graham. The most intriguing is D. Winters. Don't sleep on Jalen Graham now. Marcus Harris, sleeper pick, Jameson. There you go. Eric Hernandez, worst pick, Latu, most intriguing, Beals. Beals is very intriguing. You're talking about a five-star player who runs 4.4, who played at Georgia, and it wasn't like he never got off the bench. He made plays in the pass game, coming off the edge in the national championship game. His last game, provided that highlight that they showed on draft day. Joey Nichols, most intriguing is Jack Coleto. Most versatile. No, most versatile for sure. Gregus says, best pick, Ji'ayir Brown. Worst pick, the kicker, Moody. Sleeper pick, Darrell Luter Jr. Albert Soto. How does Brandon Allen impact the team? Haven't seen his game, and who can you compare him to? Compare him to. I mean, he's nothing super special by any stretch, but he's a 6'1" guy who's kind of smart, got some moxie, kind of athletic. Very similar, I think, to kind of a poor man's Brock Purdy. Now, I don't think there's special traits, where I do think there are special traits with Brock, but he's very similar to Brock. 6'1", productive player in college, pretty athletic, has escapability, has played football, so it's not like he's going to see something, oh my God, this guy's not like some super raw guy. So, Brock might be my comparison. Tony Nagatani, worst pick is Latu. Marcus says best pick is Ji'ayir Brown. Nagatani says best pick is Darrell Luter Jr. Alex Simpson says, great show. Thank you. Appreciate you. All right, I'm going to go get some early lunch, late morning lunch. Trock Talk says Fisher's nickname will be T-Rex. His nickname, they say, is IHOP because he pancakes everybody. I can't wait to watch Fisher this summer. I think he'll be really fun to watch. Mac Wavy Moneyman says, I really like the linebacker free agent we just signed from Minnesota. Yeah, I mean, that is an intriguing one as well. His name's Mariano Sori Marin, and he's about 235, and he's really strong against the run. He's obviously a really smart kid. He had a bunch of offers from Ivy League schools. I'm eager to see what he looks like this summer. Absolutely eager. All right, top of the hour, we're going to talk more about the NFL draft. We'll get a different perspective on it from Alex Barber, who has his own YouTube channel, young kid from Texas. We'll get his thoughts at noon. Until then, thanks to all of you. Thanks to our sponsors. And most specifically, thanks to Matt Barrows. See you at noon on The Krueger Show.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me.